All right, thank you to everyone for joining us today for the West Virginia Folklife Apprenticeship Showcase in Forest Farming. My name is Erin Reeby, and I'm with the West Virginia Humanities Council, and I'll be facilitating our showcase today. As you might have heard, that our state folklorist, Emily Hilliard, has recently taken a new position with the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation. And before I move on to a few introductions, I want to take a moment to give a little background. Our Folklife program is supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts, Folk, and Traditional Arts Program, which supports state folklife programs all across the country. The West Virginia Folklife program works to document, present, sustain, and support West Virginia's vibrant cultural heritage and living traditions. You can find more about our work on our blog, westvirginiafolklife.org, and our related social media sites at West Virginia Folklife, including Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So we're here this afternoon to celebrate participants in the second year of our West Virginia Folklife Apprenticeship Program, which is also supported by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. The program offers a stipend to West Virginia master traditional artists or tradition bearers working with qualified apprentices on a year-long in-depth apprenticeship in their cultural expression or traditional art form. These apprenticeships facilitate the transmission of techniques and artistry of forms, as well as their history and traditions. So in the 2020-21, we supported 7 apprenticeship pairs, including the forest farming pair we're going to hear from today. And the others include old time fiddle, old time banjo, home birth midwifery, seed saving and storytelling, traditional Appalachian herbalism, and sheep to shawl, the art of raising sheep and creating fiber arts. So here to moderate our showcase today is folklorist Mary Hufford. Thank you for being here. Over the past 4 decades, Mary has studied and written about the social lives of forest species in Central Appalachian communities. As a folklife specialist with the American Folklife Center, Library of Congress, and then as the director of Pennsylvania Center for Folklife and Ethnography, she directed field projects on the folklife of Southern West Virginia's Big Cold River Valley and the New River Gorge National River. In her present roles as visiting professor of folklore at Ohio State University in Columbus and associate director of Livelihoods Knowledge Exchange Network in Lexington, Mary works with colleagues and students to research and support the growing interest in non-timber forest products throughout Central Appalachian's mixed mesophytic forest region. Mary, up to you.
Thank you so much, Erin. It's really good to be here and to be able to introduce 3 people whom I've been privileged to work with over the past year, on forest-based traditions in transition. Working with Ed and Carole Daniels and with Clara Haizlett has renewed and amplified my already considerable appreciation for the magnificent Central Appalachian forests and its human and more than human communities. In particular, it's been marvelous to witness the support given by the West Virginia Folklife program to practices that are as ecologically, culturally, and economically revitalizing and as urgently needed to address planetary crises as forest farming. Though forest farming is quite venerable in West Virginia and in indigenous communities around the world, it's only within the last few decades that its recognition as a viable solution to economic, cultural, and ecological issues has gained traction. And I've learned a lot about that just from visiting with Ed and Carole and working with Clara. It's therefore my pleasure today to introduce to you the participants of West Virginia's first ever forest farming apprenticeship. Ed Daniels of Mill Creek in Randolph County, together with Carole Daniels, both of Shady Grove Botanicals, and Clara Haizlett of Wellsburg in Brooke County. A ginseng digger and cultivator since he was young, Daniels and his wife Carole own and operate Shady Grove Farm in Randolph County, where they grow ginseng, goldenseal, ramps, cohosh, and industrial hemp, among other plants. Haizlett, who was an intern with the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage's American Ginseng, Local Knowledge, Global Roots project, plans to start a forest farm on her family's land in Brooke County. Of course, we all know that 2020 was an unusual year, which required all the apprenticeship pairs to adapt so they could safely continue their work. Some, particularly those whose knowledge is seasonally dependent, like seed saving and this apprenticeship in forest farming, have had to adapt. Normally the apprenticeship program is a kind of face-to-face, knee-to-knee, hoe-to-hoe interaction. And this year they had to figure out ways around the COVID and its restrictions and issues. So it was really heartwarming and inspiring to witness how masters and apprentices persevered to make their apprenticeships viable, whether through virtual meetings and phone calls, masked and socially distanced meetings, sending materials through the mail, and more. In this presentation, Ed and Clara will give an overview of their apprenticeship in forest farming. Then we'll have Q&A. I'll ask a few questions, and then we will open it up to the audience. We encourage you to submit your questions through Q&A, and we look forward to addressing them following this presentation by Ed and Clara. Over to you.
All right, Carole, you can go ahead and share your screen.
As we was introduced and got to know one another, Clara showed a strong interest in the farm of wild medicinal plants and roots and rhizomes. And she was very persistent of coming out to the farm, seeing how things was done. And I was very eager and open to show her that there's different approaches to doing so. Sometimes it's as simple as just planting a seed, but if you're looking for quick turnaround as far as seed production, you may want to plant a root or a rhizome. Here we're looking at a very mature ginseng plant on the left with a large cluster of berries. Each one of those berries can produce 2 to 3 seeds. Usually here in the Mountain State, 1 to 2, but I have seen as many as 3. Those seeds are valuable. Those would be your future rootlets, and could be an income if you was to sell the rootlets. Or there's also folks out there who would just be interested in planting your seed. Clara was very interested in the seed production, and she wanted to learn as much as she could because she wanted to take that back to her own farm and get something started. We was able to get some seed and some rootlets for her possession to do so, and she was quite excited. And then when she had plants come up, she couldn't wait to inform me that it was a go, and she was so excited.
Yeah, I'll just add something here too. Because of COVID, we decided to, here we can see the slide about the Zoom meetings, but we started off doing Zoom meetings, and in our kind of planning for this apprenticeship, we talked about how, you know, maybe I go to the farm a bunch of times and see how things are done. And then eventually when I feel comfortable, you know, I start planting and doing things on my family's farm in Brooke County. But with COVID, we kind of reversed it because we weren't meeting in person. So instead we had Zoom meetings at the beginning, and then they sent seeds and rhizomes up to Brooke County. And I immediately started planting pretty much because it was springtime, which is one of the times to plant. And it was awesome to like, even though we had that setback of having to do things virtually, I still was doing hands-on things just with virtual instruction.
We made it work.
Yeah.
Clara, do you want to talk
Yes.
about?
Okay, yeah, I can talk about it. Yeah, so part of the virtual instruction included trying to figure out how to, where to plant. So basically, they sent me a list of like different companion plants that I should look for to find a site where I should plant ginseng and goldenseal, and also like different, like the appropriate slope that ginseng thrives in. So I did some exploring on the farm, and we have a lot of invasives on the property, and a lot of the ground isn't suitable for planting ginseng, at least not yet. That's the goal in the future. But there were a couple different spots, so 2 different spots in particular that we found, and I just took some videos and explained like what I was seeing, and then I would send it to them, and then on my own I would try to identify the companion plants that we were supposed to find. And that was really helpful, like I said, with just jumping right in and like, starting to get my hands in the dirt right away.
We sent her on a little nature hike too to identify plants. That was
Yeah, scavenger hunt. I love plant scavenger hunts. Yeah, so here I'm planting some. My mom was really interested in doing it with me, so we did some planting together. And then my brother, he and his family, they live on another part of the farm, and we found a spot over behind his house where I could plant with him and my little nephew there. And kids are so funny with planting, as Ed and Carole will talk about, and me too, but they're really into it. So it was really fun planting with my little nephew here.
Again, we'll talk or touch base a little bit about the seeds. We have some, what I would call perennial plants that produce some very large clusters or balls of berries. Some plants can produce up to 55, 60 seeds per plant. And if you do math, if you can multiply each seed by say $2 to $3 in 2 years, there is some money to be made off a ginseng seed to create the rootlets. We look at things that's very sustainable. I'd rather put a live root in the ground and harvest the top and the berries to create new life. The tea that we make from the dried ginseng tops is used a lot throughout the United States. We ship all over, and we have people actually on a list waiting for it this year. So we're happy to share, and it's very important to do little counts to see if your plant is hardy. You know that this particular plant, say we call it L2, gave us 30 seeds last year, and this year maybe it's given us 35. But how old is that plant? And does it sort of peak like a man and go backwards in the near future because of the way a ginseng plant grows? It's like a man. It gets big, say around 15 to 20 years, and then it may start to shrink and go back. And you'll see the little sheer bags that we put over the berries. We try to do that to keep the varmints and the squirrels, the chipmunks, or there's various amounts of birds, turkeys like them. So, if you don't want your ginseng spread all over the hillside and you want to sort of create nurseries, I would advise to get those bags and sort of protect your profits or your bounties. Here we are at a what I would call one of our small nurseries, and we're looking at some smaller perennial plants that's putting off seed. And a lot of times I like to plant within that same nursery the juveniles or the rootlets from the seed until they're 2 years old, and then we'll move them to the wild. Not so much to delay the growth, but what we're looking for is a root that has hardy hair fibers. So once it's introduced into the wild, it will survive. If you move them at the first year or so, you're liable to lose those hair roots, and you're not going to see the ginseng to live on. So we've chosen to do that maybe after 2 years. And there on the right, you'll see Clara holding up a nice root that we had decided to move out of the parental stock and maybe take into the wild that day.
This is just kind of a goofy photo of me when I found my first ginseng plant in the wild. I was just walking, taking a hike near my family's farm up in the northern panhandle, and I just couldn't believe it. I remember I texted Ed and Carole, and I was like, "Is this what I think this is?" Because
I remember that day. I do.
We were excited for her.
yeah, because I had heard so much about it. The reason I met Ed and Carole through being an intern with the Smithsonian Folklife about their ginseng program. And so I had interviewed so many people about their relationship with ginseng, but I had never found it on my own. So I was just itching to find it, and it was such a great day when it happened. Here, this is kind of what we were talking about with transplanting. So when I did the transplanting with Ed and Carole on their farm, it helped me be able to do it on my own. So when they would send me roots, I kind of knew exactly what to do. And one of the things that I find really interesting about goldenseal is how resilient it can be when you transplant. Like you see on the right there's so many little hairs, and you can just, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can just plant a hair or a couple hairs and the root will come back. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. You're exactly right.
Yeah, and I think that's so cool how resilient plants can be.
On this particular day that Clara was able to come in person to our farm, this was a raised bed that we'd created, and we were planting some goldenseal with a few ginseng seed in. Goldenseal is up and rising, as in a product or a plant that everybody would like to have on their own property. And we was working with her to show how many plants you could put in an area, such as the raised bed that we were at, and then harvest and pick out to thin out the population a little bit so they're not so dense. But then you can create shade for the ginseng seeds that's growing under it. So it's a dual purpose bed, and they are companion plants. So it's a win-win for both of us.
So here, this was the following spring after we initially planted. I don't live with my parents, but that's where the patch is. So my mom was walking around and she was like, "Clara, I think there might be some ginseng that came up." And I was like, I don't really have a green thumb. I don't feel like, so I was excited about it, but I wasn't getting my hopes up in any way. And then when I went in person, I was just blown away, because not only did the ginseng come up really well and the goldenseal, but I also learned a lot. I had learned a lot about the companion plants that I didn't know in the previous year, a lot of the spring ephemerals that come up. And so I realized we had a bunch of black cohosh and wild ginger and things that I didn't know we had already. So it was just super exciting.
And I might add, in the picture that we're looking at, the top left is a goldenseal plant. The bottom picture is the ginseng. That's a nice 4-prong. And the top right you're looking at would be a black cohosh. Those are all companion plants, and you can build a small ecosystem with that and some ferns, and And if you don't get too dense, they'll grow and flourish for years.
So we also, oh, go ahead, Carole, you should talk about this.
Go ahead.
Well, I feel like you're the salve expert. I knew that Carole, well, one of the times that I was there, I ate some hot peppers and I got them all over my mouth, and my lips were burning so bad. And then Carole gave me this salve, this plantain, and I don't remember what else was in it. And it just like completely cured it. And so I was really interested in learning how to make her salves. And she can maybe tell a little bit about the salves that she makes.
Yeah, I make several different kinds with natural plants like cayenne, plantain. My grandson and I harvest plantain in our yards and over at the farm, and we make plantain salve, and I make a rosemary and pine, and then we also do some CBD salves as well. But on this particular day when Clara was at the farm, we actually I created a recipe for like a vapor rub for, like to clean out your, help your chest and congestion, and kind of like a Vicks vapor rub. It needed to be a little bit stronger, but this is something that we created last minute, and it worked, and it was fun. I think she enjoyed it, and it's salve making isn't very difficult anyway, but with sometimes you have to tweak a recipe, which is probably what I'm gonna have to do with this one, but it's just something that you can take with simple ingredients that you can harvest, as well as local beeswax, and create a product that is healing or soothing or medicinal, like Claire had mentioned with the hot peppers. She received instant relief, and that was just a concoction of something I've created several years ago. So let's go to the next slide.
So another kind of fun side project that we did on one of our visits was learning how to can meat. I have been really interested in it because I've been starting to hunt more, and I had heard that canned venison was really good. So we didn't have venison on hand, but we learned how to make it using beef brisket. And then that fall, when I went, I got a deer and was able to can a bunch of the meat, and it was so good. And now it's like one of my favorite foods. But, with things like that, with canning and salve making, they're things that you can like look up online, but having someone guide you through it in person just like helps you so much in like your understanding of it and your willingness to experiment with different things. So that was a really fun side project.
Mm-hmm. And you just have a better reassurance when you have somebody there you can ask questions. And of course, my mom taught me how to can, and I continually try to can something new every year. But this was something that Claire had an interest in, and I know it's not forest farming related, but we took the weekend and took a break from the forest farming and agroforestry, and I taught her how to can, and it's something that she can pass on and continue throughout her life.
Actually, didn't we add some morel mushrooms with some of that day?
Oh yeah, they were so good.
I know, it definitely made a difference, I thought. So yeah, as it was mentioned, we did some industrial hemp planting, and in the early stages of our first year, Clara was there to help us plant the seedlings that, as you look at them there, they're about 2 weeks old, 2.5 at the most. They grew fast. Water was one of our main issues. Since then, we have put in holding tanks that we can pump to and run drip lines, but we've also developed CBD oil and CBD salve for pain and different things that we've got quite a clientele using. Actually, some local physical therapists are applying our CBD salves to their patients or clients, and a lot of them before they leave the shop asking what it is and where they can get it. And he also sells it for us. So it's a growing thing. Not so much a forest, but we're utilizing some of the farmland up on the mountaintop at about 3,500 feet. Actually, on this day, we had some morel spawn or spores that we were trying to establish a morel patch in an old apple orchard that's there on the farm. We moved some leaves and soaked the spawn in some water, some sawdust as well, and spread it out. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any there yet, but who knows? Time will be the tell the story. And this is our grandson, Briar, a few years back. He's 6 going on 7 now, but it's amazing how intrigued kids get whenever a seed sprouts. We're part of a program called Plant the Seed Project here in Randolph County Schools. No longer teaching about ginseng, unfortunately, at the schools, but we're teaching about vegetables and germinating plants to grow those vegetables. And the kids are just as excited because a lot of times they get to take the plants home. Or this year, we hope to be able to send every kid in Randolph County home with seed packets so they can do it their own property. This was probably one of the first presentations that I'd done in Randolph County schools, teaching about medicinal herbs, goldenseal and ginseng. One of the things that, you know, it attracts kids is I teach them that they can grow money. And they're all interested, they're all ears because they want to learn how to grow money. Well, if you don't own a farm tractor and you don't have 100 acres, you can still farm ginseng. And you catch kids' attention at a young age and get them to plant this as well with goldenseal and other companion plants. By the time they're old enough to graduate from school, there is a little bit of money for them. And if you teach them how to harvest the tops and how to dry them and how to resow the seeds that come off the plants, you know, they're learning to put back and be sustainable. And that's the mission of Plant the Seed. This is some students at a school in Randolph County as we were making cell blocks. Again, you know, trying to teach kids to be sustainable, not always buy up a bunch of plastic and things. That particular tool, I think, is $28. And I try to teach them proper ways to make these cell blocks, and then I also assist them in picking out the seeds and how to plant them in those cells. And within a few weeks, they was so excited and wanted to show me when I went back to the school, look what I grew, look what we grew. And the excitement was just worth more than words or the money that anyone could ever pay.
So when we were initially planning the apprenticeship, I was hoping to tag along on some of these Plant a Seed programs that they're already doing in Randolph County. But, you know, it was really difficult to, you know, do public events during the past couple years. So instead, in a couple years ago, my partner and I started this camp called Buffalo Creek Day Camp. It's just an informal 1-week camp during the summer, and we just invite some community kids to join. But this year, we decided to add a component of forest farming and stewardship. So it was a 4-day camp, and each day we talked about one day was plant, the other day was about trees, the other day was about animals, and then the 4th day was about the earth. So we can switch to the next slide. So I got some inspiration from Ed and Carole's Plant a Seed program, and we dedicated the last day towards doing forest farming. So we did plant scavenger hunt, and then at the end of the day, we gave them little ginseng seeds that Ed and Carole had sent, and they were really excited because I think they had been primed this whole week of like, oh, we should care about the earth. Oh, this is fun. And then when they actually got the seeds, they were really excited. And then in the right hand picture, you can see them looking at the forest farming handbook. And this was not a posed picture. It kind of looks like it was posed, but they were all like, wait, is that ginseng? Is that cohosh? And they were looking on the cover of it to see which one it was. You can go to the next one and just And then to the next one, because they're just kind of pictures. Oh, and for the final presentation, the parents were there too. So we were able to engage the parents a little bit, which was cool. And the parents were also interested. One of the ideas that Ed and Carole gave me was the plant scavenger hunt, which was probably the most excited they were all week, which is kind of funny. You know, we did a lot of different activities that they had a lot of fun with, but the plant scavenger hunt, I think maybe it was because of like the competition aspect, or I don't know what it was, but they were 8 boys and they were so into it. We divided them into 2 teams, and then you can see I made a chart of different points for each plant. And they were just running all over the hillsides being like, Mayapple, I found a Mayapple, milkweed. And it was just really fun. You know, I was having a blast, they were having a blast, and they did actually find some wild ginseng. So we took them to a different place that wasn't on the farm. And yeah, they found some wild ginseng, which was just made my day.
It sounds like an awesome program that you and your partner were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the last one, the land stewardship, we also did some invasive species removal. Ed and Carole have a beautiful plot of land in Randolph County, so I don't think they struggle as much with invasive species, but on our property, that's like a really big issue. So you can see here we had the kids again with a competition, see who could like remove the most tree of heaven and kudzu and things like that, autumn olive.
So we've talked a lot about the forest farming and different ways to approach it. These 2 books are very informative. And if you can find them, I would buy them. They will give you step-by-step instructions on, again, your location, companion plants, the amount of sunlight that's desired or not desired, east, north, northeast, slope, whichever you want to plan on. And it'll give you a lot more in depth than what we're doing here today, but it also gives you an inspiration to get out and grow. And so if you're into it, I would highly recommend either of these 2 books or both if you can do so.
Here are just some pictures from the apprenticeship of us. And as we're wrapping up, we have one more slide left, but I just want to say this has been a really awesome experience, because I think for me, I have a long-term goal of establishing like a very healthy forest in that area and in Brooke County and making it accessible for people. But to have this as a foundation and have already started planting and starting with the stewardship of this land, it's just been a really cool inspiration to keep going, because if I've already acquired this knowledge and if I've already made these steps, I can just keep growing. And yeah, it's just been awesome. And then, yeah, so we're wrapping up, and we just would like to thank the Folklife Apprenticeship Program and the Humanities Council. Like I said, it's been an amazing opportunity, and I know we're Ed, Carole, and I are all really grateful for it.
Yes, thank you from Carole and myself, and watch out for us in the near future. We're going to be getting a little bit broader throughout Randolph and maybe other counties here in West Virginia. Plant to seed.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation. The chat and the Q&A are filling up with a few questions and comments. I wanted to also acknowledge that Carole Daniels made many of the photographs that you've just seen, and I'm sure Clara may have made some too. She's a videographer and photographer and so forth. And They're very good. So I just had a few questions just to get us going, and then we'll open it up for questions from chat and Q&A. So one of the questions, I know we've been talking about this and we've just seen some of the books that are resources, but could you tell us just how you define forest farming? What is forest farming? Is forest farming the same in West Virginia as it would be in other places? I mean, what's going on with forest farming? Why is it becoming so important?
Well, I think, again, when I teach that in the school to the younger kids, a lot of them feel discouraged because they're not from wealthy families. They don't have big farm tractors or hundreds of acres of fields, but they may have shaded areas, say some trees in their outlying backyard. And I try to inspire them to utilize that space in a forest farming method. And we'll assist them in helping choose the best areas if asked. But sometimes it's their own method. You know, they want to plant the seed and they want to see what's growing. But if you tell them that, you know, in this certain shaded area, you can grow goldenseal, ginseng, or cohosh, and they do so, they're happy that they've listened and now they're wanting to share what they've done. So the forest farming is something that's usually done under the canopy of a forest.
Okay.
That would be my best description.
And it sounds as if it depends on that canopy.
Well, a lot of these roots and rhizomes are items that do not like full-on sun. Ginseng, you get more than 65% sunlight, that's not going to grow. It prefers like 80% shade. So, you know, site selection is very important. And those kids, they learn quick. They want to be successful. They just need just a little bit of guidance.
And I like to add that also, not every forest farm that you go to are going to be identical because of the ecosystem, the terrain, the soil, the canopy, but also your planting methods and how you continue to grow those plants.
Your approach, yes. Some people do till under the canopy. We choose not to because that changes the characteristics of maybe valuable roots in the future.
It sounds like there's an element of experimentation that may have to go on.
Well, it could be experimentation if they don't choose to look and see what others have done. But yes, it is experiment.
So Clara, I think you touched on a question that I was going to ask, but you could elaborate a bit how the apprenticeship format of learning, what that allowed for that might not have been possible otherwise. I mean, could you elaborate on that a little more? And I was also interested in how it proceeded just assuming, I know Ed has been very involved in teaching for many years, but was there sort of a sense in which you both participated in the curriculum? What we might want to call the curriculum. You know, what did you want to learn, and how did you figure that out?
Yeah. This style of learning really suits me. I'm very much like a hands-on learner. I can read all day an instruction manual and then I start to do it and I'm like, what? So I'm totally a hands-on person. And that's one of the reasons that I was attracted to the program, because, you know, it emphasized hands-on learning and also a collaborative approach to the curriculum. So, you know, we talked before we made our application of, you know, what things that I wanted to learn and what things Ed was, you know, comfortable or excited to teach. And so we definitely collaborated on that. And then throughout, you know, things like the canning venison, like we would just message before we had a visit together and, you know, talk about a rundown of what we might want to go over. And yeah, they were super excited to, be very open to my random ideas, and they had great ideas too. So it allowed for a lot of flexibility and hands-on learning, which I love.
Yeah, that's great. I loved that portion on the canning and the salve making, how it went into that value added one for yeah, I mean, all for domestic purposes, but I guess you can also sell them. But I wondered, somebody was a bit apologetic about introducing meat canning, and I thought, well, why wouldn't that be part of forest farming, raising and harvesting deer? I mean, that's kind of what you're doing anyway, right? I maybe you don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so Ed, there was another question I was very curious about. What role has ginseng harvesting and cultivation played throughout your life? And how is that changing? How are you constantly growing or learning through it?
As a young kid, I didn't realize that over harvesting could be so effective or detrimental to the plant's population. And I don't feel that that's expressed enough throughout or taught as improper plants or stewardship towards the plants. And, I've spoke that, as a kid, I bought my shoes, my school clothes, my first car with money that I dug of ginseng. And I've went back to those areas years later, and I'm not seeing the population that was once there. So with this, I scratched my head a little bit and wondered what I can do to put back. And raising these plants and getting the seed and starting rootlets or just planting the seed is our mission to put something back. I'm not a big fan of people over harvesting. I preach 30% of what is legal is all you should take. I wasn't taught that. In the late 70s, it was dig that root, you can cash it in to get some money. And as I've become a little more conservative and want to be more sustainable, I'm looking at different approaches to change that with a lot of the diggers that's in our area. So one of the things we're doing this year, as the diggers come in to sell us these valuable roots in fresh form, I'm giving them seed back to take to their areas to plant. So we are trying to put back more so than we ever took. And I would encourage everybody to follow suit.
So do you find that in this, the exchange of roots for seeds, or whatever the transaction is, that you're also able to do some more? Is there a lot of public education that needs to go on for this?
Yes. Unfortunately, I was told that you got to be careful giving out seeds if they're going to take them home to plant, because they have to have a determination done to make sure that there's not ginseng already growing there. So these folks are actually diggers who probably go back in some deep, dark hollow that their grandfather took them or their father took them ginsenging, and they're putting back seeds for me. So in the years to come, we won't be dealing with a shortage of the plant. I'm just hoping it's more sustainable.
Okay. Well, Aaron, is it time to move to the question and answer, do you think?
Sure, we can look at some question and answers, and if we run low there, then you can ask more questions.
I have more questions.
Sure. We had, go ahead. You can see the Q&A, right?
Yes. Okay. We have one in the Q&A and about 15 in the chat. Okay. Brian Jenkins asks, when is the best time to harvest tops?
Well, most of my buyers would like to see the tops still green. As they become yellow, I still have a few people who would like to purchase those, but I would say second, third week of September is usually prime. Here in the mountains, we're starting to see some of them yellow up. But there is a small clientele that still like those for their particular use.
But definitely after September 1st.
Yes, everything's after September 1st.
Oh, really? Even for the tops? Yeah, I guess.
And Carol asked in the chat, how do you harvest the tops?
Yeah.
Actually, if you had a pair of snips or scissors, a small pair, because you don't want something large as you're walking around in the woods, you might stumble and puncture yourself. We would like to see the tops cut an inch above the last curl on the neck of the ginseng, and then put into a paper bag and kept separate. Now, a real good digger who has the time would take and cut each leaflet off and press those in parchment paper and press them down flat. That would fetch more of a price to the buyer. Now, a lot of them just shove them in the bags and, they sell for $25 a pound green. So, that's something to add to their day in the woods without bringing all the roots out. They're still getting a little gas money, so to say. So we try to encourage them to bring those tops in so we can look at them and make sure that they're not harvesting plants that's too small as well.
How recently have they started buying the tops?
It's new. It's really come on the last couple of years. Not everybody wants to buy them. Not everybody wants to fool with them. We choose to do so because, again, we want to teach folks to be a little more sustainable, maybe not harvest all those roots that you find. If you're looking for a little added value into your day's effort, bring me out the tops. Don't bring the berries. Make sure the berries are put in the woods where you found them, but the tops will add to your bounty for the day without digging the smaller roots to try to do so.
Okay, great. All right, now we have, oh boy. And Julie Palace says, I would love to plant ginseng. Where do you get the starts?
Well, we have different programs going on through our website, or you can check out Forest Farming Initiative here in West Virginia. They're doing some mini grants. I'm thinking right now the mini grants are between $100 and $400, which is free. They give you that money to buy seed and rootlets to start your own little patch on your property. We sell starter kits. I think you can get in for like $125. And then we do try to set things to where if you was to buy 4 of the starter kits, we could do an even 400, which would be equivalent to maybe the grant that you'd receive. And that would include roots, seed, and goldenseal rhizome, and maybe 1 or 2 of the black cohosh. So you sort of get a good start of getting a small ecosystem starting on your property, not just one plant to do a monocrop. We want you to do other medicinals and companion plants as well. And a lot of that goes back to you get a determination through the state. And if you talk to Robin Black, I think she can assist you in that.
She's with the West Virginia Division of Forestry in Charleston.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good place to start.
And then there was quite a bit of enthusiasm expressed over some of the ideas for, the scavenger hunt for kids. That was a big hit in a few of the comments here. Now I'm going to move down here.
Kids are excited to learn. And if they can identify a plant that you're trying to teach them about, and if they go out and hold a picture of that plant in their hand and find another one, they can't wait to tell you. I mean, they just get so excited. And it's a good feeling to know that they have an interest. Now, there'll be some kids that really don't care, but they may be involved in sports and other things, and that's what their attention's focused at. But there is a lot of kids that they come from depressed areas right here in our local community, and those are the kids that probably would be in the woods foraging to find whether it be food or roots or rhizomes to sell. So if we can touch them and assist them with proper stewardship and proper ways to harvest, that's something that we really stress to conquer.
Yeah,
So- Oh, go ahead.
I've told Ed and Carole, and I think Mary too, this story, but one of the, during the plant scavenger hunt, a lot of the kids were really into it. And then there was one who just like the whole week, he just kind of didn't really seem like he was getting anything out of it. He seemed like he was having fun whenever we had like free time and stuff, but just, it was just kind of drippy. And then one of the questions I asked them about, what is this plant? And none of them could answer it. And I did not expect this kid to answer it because he hadn't been like engaging very much all week. And out of that whole group, I waited like a couple minutes, and then finally he was like, cohosh? And that's what it was. And so it was just crazy that even, the kid that you think might not be engaged or interested, even them, something is getting through, and they're still engaged in some way. Because it's it's fun. Yeah.
That is really great. Okay, now JK asks, is there a similar program and or resources in Virginia? And I'm assuming you're talking about the apprenticeship program. I believe that the Virginia Humanities program, which has a Folklife program, probably does apprenticeships. There's two possibilities here. The apprenticeships, contact John Lohman at the end and tell them if you're interested. Usually it would work the same way. You have somebody who wants to learn and somebody who's a master, and ginsenging, I think, is successful in Virginia, and that would work. The other thing is that the reason I'm here today instead of Emily Hilliard, the West Virginia Folklife program coordinator, is that she just took a new position with the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation. Well, it's not the foundation anymore, it's just Mid-Atlantic Arts. And that program, I know, will be looking to create apprenticeships. So that's another place to start looking, and there's lots of response to demand there. So keep your eyes open for calls for proposals. Let's see, does North Carolina, I actually don't know. Does anyone know if North Carolina has a forest farming apprentice? Well, North Carolina does have an event coming up very soon. It's a forest farming workshop in Asheville. I don't have any more information than that on the top of my head. Do you happen to know anybody? There's one coming up. I think it's very soon. Okay.
I know that in Western North Carolina, they have a very active forest farming community and ginseng community. So I'm sure if you looked it up, you'd be able to find some resources.
Okay, this is a great one. Ennis Smith, are there certain types of trees that should be around in order to grow ginseng?
Yes, you want to look for trees that produce high calcium leaves. That would be sugar maples, beech, walnut is also a tree that they like to grow under. But I'd say sugar maple and beech would be the ones I would seek first.
Very interesting. Okay, so Donna Safley once says that in one of the books, it recommends removing the tops so no one can find your ginseng patch. Can you sell those tops, or would they be harvested too soon?
If it's green, it's a valuable top. It's just, you got to look at your state rules and regulations. Unfortunately, here in West Virginia, and we're approaching the state on some of this, the rules was wrote years ago as in ginseng harvesting in the wild. I have approached them that farming ginseng, we have folks who cross our property sometimes to hunt wild animals, as in early seasons. Like right now, I think we have early bear season. So if the tops was still on, they may become very visible or noticed. So check with your state rules. I do know that harvesting the top while it's green is best, and it's at your discretion whether you do it after September 1st or before, but our state rule is after September 1st.
I encourage everyone to go to look at the comments in the chat here, because there are some additional responses to these questions that are being raised. Lori Gerhardt adds that an older gentleman told them to pop the tops off if you aren't ready to harvest the root, which is kind of what Ed was.
You know, there's tricks to growing ginseng. I know guys that will take the berry pods off so the roots will grow bigger. You know, the energy of that plant is transformed to different things. Is it going to new growth, which would be the seed, the berries? Or if you take that berry pod off at an early age or time of the year, that energy then goes to the roots. So it depends on what you're doing. I'm not here to grow big roots. I'm looking at building the population.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out that Brian tells us that the North Carolina program is virtual and is this Saturday. So thank you, Brian, for sharing that. We are about out of time. So Mary, do you have any further questions? No?
No,
Okay, I appreciate everyone coming today. Ed, Carole, Clara, do you have anything further to share about your year-long apprenticeship?
Just thank you.
You're welcome.
Really?
We are very excited to be hosting this program. We have applied for a third round. The council has applied, so we're looking forward to hearing about that in the spring. So stay tuned. I appreciate everyone coming today. I appreciate all of our participants and attendees coming, and we will see you all later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank